All right, so welcome everyone. We still have a few people joining in, so we'll keep adding them as they come. My name is Chris Heater, and I am the current NAFEX president. I came on a little around 3 years ago, right? 2019. That was a little bit before the pandemic, and the pandemic kind of threw things for a loop for all of us, obviously, but definitely for NAFEX and how we operate. So we're going to touch a little bit on that today. But I do want to give just a couple of things here in the beginning, just to get everyone oriented. I think most of you are probably familiar with Zoom now, but just in case not, this is not a webinar format. So you guys do have the ability to speak and to be on video, but I recommend that you stay muted and you take yourself off of an active video screen, so you can take yourself off video for the presentation part. That will make it easier for streaming purposes, so that everyone can stream nicely and won't have any blips or glitches with it. And then towards the end, when we do show and tell, then we can obviously come back on video and people can unmute as needed. You are encouraged to ask questions. There's a chat function. If you use your little arrow toward the bottom, a little panel comes up and there's something called chat. You can type a question in there and we'll check that at the end of the meeting and in between the meeting and show and tell, and we can answer any questions that there might be. And finally, I think for anyone who's just joined us, this is being recorded. So if there's something that we present or talk about and you want to catch it later, you'll be able to do that. All of the sessions will be recorded and all of them will be available in a couple of days in the website. You'll need to log in with your email address to access those, but they'll be up there 24/7, so you can listen to them over and over again if you like. And of course, last year's conference is there. All of those sessions, along with all of our interest group meetings that we've recorded. So there's a ton of content. So for those of you who are brand new, who just signed up this week for this conference, you have access to last year's conference too, which is a huge bonus. So thank you all for joining us tonight. This is our annual meeting, which we would normally do in person, but times have changed. And so we are going with the flow and making this happen. I do want to thank our sponsors. We have 5 sponsors this year. Our primary sponsor, One Green World, has put up a lot to sponsor this, and we appreciate them. And we'll be talking about our other sponsors as the next couple of days go on. So we want to thank all of our sponsors. All right, so just a couple words about NAFEX for those of you who might be brand new. It was founded in 1967, and I think if I'm correct in what I've been hearing, it was kind of a spin-off of the Northern Nut Growers Association. So the Northern Nut Growers has been around for over 110 years. North American Fruit Explorers has been around for about 55 years. It's devoted mostly to growers here in the United States and Canada. However, we do have members who are elsewhere in the world, which is fantastic. And, we're all about growing fruits, whether we're a hobbyist or whether we're professionals or nurserymen. The beauty of NAFEX is that, anyone is welcome at the table. So I was trying to describe this to a colleague of mine here at the university. And, I said, the wonderful thing about this is that NAFEX has both academics and non-academics, and it's a great way to dialogue with each other and to share information, and we'll be seeing a lot of that in the next 3 days. So again, I want to welcome everyone today to tonight's annual meeting. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and begin. Let me get my screen share going here. Let's see. Hang on just a second. Talks amongst yourselves. Kind of, you can't really.
I'll add one thing. I'm Leslie Wade. I'm the conference chair this year, and I'm also NAFEX on the board of director. I'm the secretary and programs chair. If you want to raise your hand later on, when we get into the Q&A, it's hidden under the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. So look for that in the reactions section if you want to raise your hand later on and have us call on you, although it'll get pretty informal toward the end. So take it away, Chris.
All right, I'm trying to open it up. Hold on just a second.
If you go down to the left of that slider bar, there you go. That was the presentation mode is just to the left of the negative sign on the slider. There you go.
Thank you. There we go. All right, we're good?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So, first of all, I want to thank Leslie for the beautiful graphics that she puts together for these conferences. This is not my wheelhouse, and she's amazing at this. So all of the graphics that you've seen leading up to this and that you'll see throughout this conference were done by Leslie. So I really want to thank her for all that she's done in getting just beautiful artwork for this. So to begin with, oh, it's not forwarding. There we go. All right, so officially, we try to follow Robert's Rules of Orders. I'm not the best at remembering all the rules of Robert, but we will call this officially to order. And come on. I just want to briefly talk about the NAFEX board. So I'm the president. Our vice president has been Taylor Malone, who's been on the board for a couple of rounds. Leslie is serving not only as our conference chair, but also as our secretary, and Chuck Wilson has been our treasurer. Our directors right now are Chris Homanix, Jorge Zalvader, Larry Stevenson, Tom Lucier, Taylor Yowell, Nick Cascow, and Adam Bingham. And the outline for the meeting is pretty straightforward. We're going to briefly mention the meeting minutes, and then I will give a brief financial report on behalf of Chuck. We'll talk about old business just briefly, new business, and then we'll talk about elections. I'm a fan of short meetings. I hate sitting in long meetings, so my goal is to make this as painless and quick as possible. But if I skip over something or if anyone wants more explanation, don't hesitate to ask. Oh, I have a feeling that we're on a top there. Let's see. There we go. All right, so the 2021 meeting minutes, those were presented and typed out in the winter 2022 Pomona. And rather than reading through those minutes, we are going to just go ahead and quickly do a vote to accept those minutes. I spoke with Leslie and Chris Homanix prior to the meeting, and they officially kind of made a motion to accept and seconded that motion to accept those minutes. So if everyone could quickly, if you know how to raise your hand, just please raise your hand so that Leslie and whomever can see that we are voting on accepting the 2021 meeting minutes. I'll give everyone to figure that out.
It's under the reactions button. So just look under reactions, that little smiley face on your bottom bar, and that's where you can raise your hand. So we're raising our hand to accept the meeting minutes. We'll give that a few more seconds. All right. We're still entering people into from the waiting room. All right, if everyone can take their raised hand down. We'll let that disappear. And then if there's anyone opposed, please raise your hand. So now if anyone's opposed for the meeting minutes. All right, Leslie, I'm assuming we can accept the meeting minutes? We sure can. Okay, great. All right. So now I want to move on to the financial report. This was compiled as of today, and this fluctuates a little bit day to day based on our invested mutual fund. But we have cash on hand and investments. So former board members years ago made this smart decision to take some of the money that we had and invested in a mutual fund and have that available for research funds and things that might be needed down the line. So I'm giving you both 2021 and 2022 numbers. Cash on hand is a little higher this year because we have increased our membership significantly over the last year and a half. And the investments have gone down a bit. So
anyone who is familiar with your own investments or the investment world, you know that, with economics and everything, that's going to constantly fluctuate, and we're currently in a down period. So our investments have gone down. We've not dipped into that mutual fund, but that's just how it goes. And, once we get out of an economic slump, that number will go back up. Overall, our total assets are down by around $4,000, a little over $4,000 this year, but that in general is actually pretty excellent for the economic times that we're in. So we are doing quite well financially. And I want to thank everyone who continues to renew their memberships, because that's what keeps us going. All right, so old business. I just want to talk briefly about how we have survived and how we're growing forward and coming out of the pandemic. Traditionally, NAFEX met in person. We had an annual conference somewhere in the United States, usually, occasionally in Canada, and we had in-person experiences where we listened to the speakers in person, and we did orchard tours, we had grafting demonstrations, just a wonderful place to meet and network with people. And that's how I've met several of you all over the years through the conferences. Jerry Lehman invited me to my first conference, and I just fell in love with how NAFEX, just has wonderful interactions with its members. Unfortunately, the pandemic put that into a tailspin, as we all know. And so just to give you a little idea of what happened. So in 2020, we kind of pivoted quickly to trying an in-person virtual conference. And it was literally 4 speakers that we did on 4 different nights through the course of 4 months. And it turned out to be successful. People liked that. It was a way for us to connect when we were all kind of homebound. And that was the precipitous for us to bring back some interest groups and to hold online meetings. So we started doing that, and that turned out to be a wonderful experience as well. So in 2021, we had a more formal virtual conference, thanks to Leslie and the team that helped her. And we had, I think, 12 sessions for that conference. And then from there, we leaped more into the interest groups on a monthly basis. And one of our goals last year was to increase our outreach and diversity in membership. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. We also needed to update our bylaws, which we did. You all voted, for those of you who are members, you voted on that last year. We made more inclusive language. It used to be back in the day, it was mostly men in our group, and so it was he. And so we have now a very inclusive group. So we've changed that language to be more inclusive, and to also reflect the fact that we are now having to have virtual meetings and how we vote for those virtual things as they come up. So bylaws were updated. Just to give you an idea of how we have grown since I came on. So I came on right after the annual meeting in Iowa in 2019, and we were at about 375 members as best we could tell. The membership records were a little off because we had just pivoted to a more virtual online registration system. And so we were trying to reconcile paper records and online records, but as far as Chuck and I could tell, we had 375 people. In 2020, we had about 400, so we grew just a little bit. With 2021 and the big virtual conference that we did, we grew substantially. Right up before the conference, we added about 250 people. And this year, as of today, we are at 860 members, and I expect that to continue to grow through the end of the year. So we are continuing to grow as we go. One of the things, too, that we've kind of begun talking about is outreach and getting more people involved in different ways. And I did a little bit of a trial of that this fall, where I went to a couple of conferences here or meetings in Indiana. I talked about NAFEX, and I donated a year membership to be auctioned off at 3 state conferences. And so that was a nice talking point for getting people introduced into what NAFEX is. And so I think this is something that I want to continue. We can talk about this as a board, or even members can weigh in on this in the months to come. But looking for those opportunities within our own communities, local, and perhaps even on a much larger scale, maybe some national conferences that are very compatible in terms of interest with what we do. So ways that we can go to those conferences, maybe have a booth, maybe donate some memberships to be auctioned or raffled off, and just get the word out there a little bit more. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that in the months to come. So we'll pivot now to new business for the meeting. I'm going to talk briefly about elections and then talk about the 2023 goals and next year's conference. So traditionally, elections have been, we have a nominating committee who finds potential nominees and presents them a month in advance before the annual meeting, usually through the Pomona. And then at the annual in-person meeting, there's a call for any nominations from the floor, and then there's an actual vote that day of the meeting. With the virtual setup, it's a little bit more difficult. And we're kind of struggling to get the conference put together and to try and really find a good slate of people. And so that took a little bit longer than we anticipated. So tonight, what I'm going to do is present the slate that we have. I'll call for nominations from the floor if there might be any. And then we will give you all a month. I'll send out information about each of these candidates, and then we'll take a vote. And we can vote all of them in if we would like. And from my perspective, the more the merrier. The more people we can have on the board and help us, the better. But we will give you guys that opportunity to vote as you would like. Oops. All right, so our candidates. We have 4. The first one, I've asked Larry Stevenson, who's been on our board, if he would be willing to serve again, at least for another year. He has been extremely invaluable for me as the president because he brings historical knowledge to NAFEX. He's been a member for quite a while, and he's someone I can draw upon to ask questions about how things might have been done, or if he can remember any specifics from years gone by. And so I've asked Larry, and he has agreed to be on the slate again. So he is one of our candidates. Josh, I thought I took out his name. I think so, but perhaps not on this version. All right, so Josh Footer, not Fruiter, Footer. He is an extension agent in Georgia that Leslie knows. And let me give you a little bit of information about Josh. He's the Agriculture and Natural Resource Extension Agent at the University of Georgia. He has worked to develop agroforestry projects and cultural preservation projects. And he's a hobby grower of numerous fruit species. So he is very keen to be involved in the board. Dan Bussey, who many of you know. Dan's an apple historian, a cider maker, former orchard manager for the Seed Savers Exchange in Iowa. And he's the author of the 7-volume Illustrated History of Apples in the United States and Canada. You have not seen that body of work, it is a must-see. I have that collection and I just absolutely love it. And then our 4th candidate, Ryan Race, is an NAFEX member and a California Rare Fruit Grower member, and he's currently has been serving on the board for the California Rare Fruit Growers. Just for those of you who are new, we have often in the past teamed up with the California Rare Fruit Growers for a conference. Ryan has a business degree. He owns 3 small businesses. One is for orchard products, one is for music management, and one is for a winery tour guide operation. I feel like I need to take a trip to California just to be on that winery tour. All right, so with that, again, I will be sending out information about all 4 of these candidates. We'll be giving you the option to vote on them as individuals or as a complete set. Again, we don't have a limit. We can take all 4 if we would like, but we'll give you that opportunity to vote. So you'll have a month now that we've presented the slate. And I do want to ask if there's any call for nominations from the floor. If there is any nominations from the floor, please enter it in the chat, and Leslie will check the chat for me, and then we can add that any nominations from the floor to the slate. If you are nominating someone else, please be sure that they are interested. if you're nominating yourself, that's great too. All right, so any nominations from the floor can be added in the chat.
And Chris, can I just add that if folks are interested in just finding out more about what that means and what kind of things we do at the board, and some of the various activities, or if folks are just interested in helping but maybe are not ready to step up to be a director, they can certainly throw that in the chat as well, and we'll make sure to follow up.
Yes, thank you. Very good. All right, so growing forward, looking at 2023, we need to start thinking about our 2023 conference. We, as a board, have been discussing the possibility of a hybrid conference. One of the possibilities is still doing the virtual speaking sessions, but then maybe finding a couple places within our own areas to host some in-person farm tours. So the other option is we all meet at one place, still have the speakers available as a virtual part. You could, hybrid both virtual and in person, and then do farm tours at that location where we meet. Meeting in just one place might prove to be difficult, just because we haven't had a lot of time to plan that. Usually in-person conferences of that magnitude need to be planned 1.5 to 2 years in advance. So if you have thoughts about that, please reach out to us or place something in the comments. If you're interested in hosting a local farm tour as part of maybe a hybrid conference, and it doesn't have to be at the same time that we hold our speaking sessions, then let us know as well. So I think we're willing to entertain lots of ideas, but I think there's also, besides the interest in having the virtual sessions still, I think that there's interest in meeting in person in some places within the US. So we'd like to try and make that happen if we can. We want to continue our outreach and diversity in our membership. I think we have a great start, and I think we have a lot of opportunities going forward to increase that outreach and that diversity in membership, and I've talked a little bit about that already. So maybe brainstorm in your own little community or state, find out and figure out if there's something that maybe you could do. Maybe you could host a booth at your farmer's market, or maybe you've got a conference in your area coming up and you'd be interested in doing a NAFEX booth there, where we can work with you to make that happen. We've been doing that here in Indiana with our Indiana nut and fruit growers. We did a weekend in October where we split up and we were at a couple different conferences all in the same weekend, and it worked out really well. We want to continue our interest groups. We've been doing those monthly via Zoom, and those have been really successful in our opinion, and we've had a lot of great feedback. So we want to continue to do that and support that activity. If there's anybody interested in speaking, or if there's a topic that you would like covered in an interest group, please email us or put that in the chat, and we will look at that as a possibility for next year. We will not have an interest group in December. We're just going to take a little bit of time off as a board just to go into the holidays and just relax. But then we'll be right back at it in January, and we'll have a January interest group meeting just to get everybody back together again. So I talked about the numbers before. The numbers, we've obviously grown since 2019 quite a bit. And for those of you who haven't been in NAFEX very long, NAFEX at one point had somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 members back before the internet was really a thing. And we lost a lot of people when the Pomona quit being printed. It went all virtual. And so a lot of our older generations who were not on the internet, we lost them, and that was really a very unfortunate thing. So that's one of the reasons why we brought the Pomona back as a printed form, and we've been trying to build our numbers back up because there's just a lot of fabulous growers out there, and we really would like to bring us all back together again. So our goal has been to grow, and we'd set a goal last year as a board to maybe reach 1,000 members by the end of 2022. We're not quite there, but we are close. So I'm very happy with the consistent growth that we've had. And I've just thrown out a couple numbers there, just, something that we can shoot for to continue bringing people into the group and sharing knowledge, whether they're hobbyists or professionals, any age. And I'd love to see some younger kids involved in NAFEX at some point. So be thinking about how you might be able to help us grow the membership. So I took this from the Pomona Handbook, and Leslie's going to talk about the Pomona Handbook. It was actually printed several decades ago, again, before the internet was a thing. And it's a wonderful collection that really encompasses what NAFEX is all about. But I took this photo because, this part from the book, because it really kind of speaks to how I see NAFEX over the years. We always need to bring new life from old roots. So while we may have some older members or people who have been around for a long time, they have a lot to share and a lot to teach us. And so I think we just need to continue that process of renewal and bringing the generations together and sharing the information that we have. And that, of course, means we also need to grow it forward with our younger generation. So this particular picture was taken. Indiana Nut and Fruit Growers gave a little grant for a school, actually 5 schools in Indiana, to start planting nut trees. We could certainly do this with NAFEX and fruit trees. But the idea is to get these kids hooked at a young age. Many of us, I can't speak for myself because I wasn't hooked on growing trees at a young age, but I hear constantly of people who learn from their grandparents or learn to graft from a grandfather. We want to be able to share this experience with kids and kind of get them interested at a very young age so that they will be the NAFEX of the future. And I used this last year. I still love this business card. I can't remember who at the conference shared this, but many of you know Nick Botner. This was his business card back in the day. He would put an apple seed on the business card and hand it out to whoever he saw. And I think this is just a wonderful way and a wonderful example of just some of the basic grassroots ways that we can share NAFEX with others. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to take a lot of money. It's just getting out there and telling people what we love to do and sharing that with them. So with that, I need a motion to close the meeting. And, you know, maybe Leslie or Chris, if one of you want to make that a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. So, and Chris, so Leslie has moved at 5:30 p.m. to close this annual meeting. And it's been seconded. So all those in favor, if you would please use the little hand raising thing.
I'll vote aye. I don't have a hand raising button.
Oh, thank you, Larry. Yeah, if you don't have the hand raising, you can unmute and say aye.
And again, for those who just joined a little late, it's under the reactions button, the little smiley face in your lower bar. And I'll make a note for the minutes. I've been taking minutes for the record for the Pomona.
Okay. So I think it's safe to say we have overwhelming majority.
Okay. Now we can lower our hands.
Lower the hands. All right. So now's the fun part. So the show and tell. So when I went to my first NAFEX meeting, which again, I got into fruit and growing fruits, you know, way later in my life than many of you. So my husband and I lived in an urban environment, a housing addition, for many, many years. And the best I could do was grow some blueberries. But we decided as our midlife crisis to go out and buy some property and move out into the middle of nowhere and grow an orchard. So at the age of 50, that's what we decided to do. And so I walked into the Indiana Nut and Fruit Growers, and the first person I met was Jerry Lehman, for those of you that know Jerry. Actually, I met Barbara Lehman first, and she took me right away to meet Jerry. And Jerry kind of, in his wonderful way, was very welcoming. And I have to say that I was one of, I think I was the second youngest person in that meeting, which was pretty amazing at the age of 50. And I was one of the fewer females at that meeting. All of those people were just so welcoming and so excited to be sharing what they knew. And Jerry was the one who invited me to the first NAFEX conference, because he was heavily involved not only with the Indiana group, but also with NAFEX and also with the Northern Nut Growers. he invited me to the Danville conference down Danville, Illinois, and that's my first conference. And the first open event that evening after some sessions was the show and tell. And that was I was hooked at that point. So love the show and tell. People brought things that they either made from their fruit or things they were trying, and they would talk about that. So we wanted to bring that back virtually. It's not quite the same. You can't taste some of the things we tasted at that meeting and subsequent meetings, but you guys can at least talk about it. So we've had a couple people email in with things that they would like to share. And then some of you have probably brought stuff to share that we will get to as well. So I want to start with, hopefully if he's on here, David Ulmer. David, if you are here, can you please unmute and say hello?
I'm here and I am unmuted, and there's my video. I hope.
Okay.
Okay. So yes.
So David, will you introduce yourself? Because I believe you said you were past president of NAFEX from years ago, correct?
Yes, I was president in 1990, I think.
Okay.
And at that time we did have, I think, over 3,000 members, Chris.
Oh, that's fabulous.
But I want to say one thing right off the bat. I am so happy with what you people have done with NAFEX. You know, you have just done a great job the last few years. You know, I kind of left NAFEX for a few years, and for several reasons, and I recently got back in with you. But yes, I'm really happy with what you guys have done.
Fantastic. Thank you. So David has sent me some photos. And so David, I'm going to start with your first one, Ulmer compost. So I've got that. I've got two pictures for you. I'll just kind of toggle back and forth between them. Do you want to talk about?
Okay. Number one, I live in Sebastopol, California. I'm a neighbor of Ryan Reyes, one of your candidates. He's over in Napa. Anyway, it's about 55 miles north of San Francisco, and as a Mediterranean climate, we don't get much rain in the summertime. In fact, we don't get any rain from late April until late October. So we don't have some of the disease pressure that you have back east and south. But I did start my fruit growing in Mississippi, and Larry Stevenson and I can tell you all about Mississippi. So anyway, so in 2000, we had moved to Sebastopol a couple of years before, and in a little compost pile, a seedling came up, a little peach seedling. And I'm a person who has always tried to nourish my seedlings, and this one came up and grew, started fruiting, and I think it's an O. Henry seedling. I grafted this tree and an O. Henry side by side, and compared them, and O. Henry ripens about a week later than this fruit, but they look almost identical. And they have one other thing in common. They're both extremely peach leaf curl sensitive. So if any of you want to grow this, you'll have to spray for peach leaf curl. But it's a wonderful tasting fruit. Everybody, and this is fruit growers now, not just people off the street, but fruit growers who taste this say it's one of the best peaches they've ever tasted. It does bear annually and very heavily, and so it needs to be thinned. We don't have significant bacterial spot here, so I don't know if it would be a bacterial spot problem back east and in the south. But I would like some people to try this back in other parts of the country and see if they would like to grow it or see how it does. It's just
great.
A good one.
All right. So the next one that David wanted to share was a Barlow pear.
In 2014, about this time of year, in November, I got a phone call. David, I hear you know a lot about pears. Would you try to identify this pear for me? So I said, oh, okay, I'll try it. It's probably an old hard kefir type pear that I don't like, but bring it on over. I was saying this to myself. And so he came over, and it was really, really a good pear. And it's, obviously a European type pear. And so we started growing this particular pear. And I grafted it, and I have been unable to identify it. So I looked at the original tree, and I've determined that this is actually what appears to be regrowth from a root. Looks like this tree was planted in a row. There was a persimmon here, a bartlett here, and this is the original tree. As you notice, it has 4 trunks that come up from the ground. So anyway, I've evaluated this tree and fruited it for the last 5 years now, and I think it's a very good fruit. It matures late. It matures in October, about 6 weeks after bartlett. I picked them this year on October the 3rd, and I cut one this week. Chris, I think I have a picture of that cut pear too.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that's the cut. I cut this a couple of days ago. As you see, it's still really firm. It's edible right now, but it's really, really, really hard. It does not have any particular grit around the core, which is good. But it probably takes, start eating it about now by taking it out and letting it ripen on the shelf for about a week or two till it starts getting a little bit softer. It will get a little fire blight, but it's not nearly as sensitive to fire blight as bartlett is. The one bad problem that I found with the tree itself is it's very thorny. It has very thorny, very sharp spurs. They seem to be getting better as my tree is maturing. The new growth doesn't seem to be nearly as thorny, and that's true of some of the seedling type pears too. They'll be really thorny early on. I know Magnus was that way when it first came out. It was very thorny. So anyway, that's a good one that I think some people might want to try growing as a very late ripening fruit to add to your fruit stuff. Okay, that's all I've got, Chris.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm gonna, let's see, try to get out of screen sharing here.
I can do that, Chris.
Okay.
Okay. And then we can switch over to gallery view so we can all see one another. And we've got a couple folks with their hands raised.
Yeah, so I do want to, so we had David, if Charlotte's here, I want to go ahead and go to her because she had emailed in about wanting to do just a quick show and tell, and then we can open it up to others. Charlotte, are you here? All right. So if Charlotte's here, we'll bring her on later. So Leslie, go ahead and can let me know who else wants to be doing a little show and tell.
Sure. So we have, I think, let's see. Jorge's got his hand up from the board.
Hey everyone, that was left up after the vote. Excuse me.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I could show you all quickly a few of my guava trees if you'd like.
Yeah.
That would be great. And you're probably pretty connected to how things are going with the recovery down in Florida after the hurricane, too, with the impact on the citrus growers. I've been very interested in that.
Right. So this is a Rainbow lime. Now that you mentioned citrus.
So Jorge, just try to keep the camera or the video really, really still because the motion's going to slow down.
A classic guava tree.
Jorge, you might want
Most of my trees are seedlings. So this is one of many seedlings that I suppose are on this grove. I didn't plant it out. I included the planting, and it's a
I know, Jorge, that you typically have some difficult connections with internet. So I know we could certainly see that if you want to put a little bit in the chat about that guava, that would be great. So and let's see if we can't at least get some of that story in the chat, since the connection's been bad. So Chris, do you want to
Yeah, so I know Barbara was interested in talking about a couple things, and she was trying to send photos in advance, but I don't think we have them. So Barbara, if you're on and you just want to check in.
Yes, well, I can check in, but you know, the Google Docs, the screen went gray after I loaded it up, and it's still gray hours later. I don't know what went wrong, but it really went wrong. so I'll just.
Barbara was one of our board members when I came on. So Barbara, why don't you just tell us what you had hoped to share?
Yeah, well, what I had, and it wasn't much to see, except I could talk a little bit about it. I had tried to graft a mulberry, and I had top working this mulberry. A lot of what I was doing this year was field grafting, and so I was going to show pictures of what the field grafts looked like, but I think you can imagine, you know, sticks on sticks. But the mulberry project, I tried 7 different grafts on that mulberry tree, having taken the top out of a tree. It wasn't a huge tree, but it was, you know, it had 4 or 5 years of growth, and that's fairly large, but none of them took. I heard belatedly that mulberry is extremely hard to graft, so I feel a little better, but it's still not something I want to tackle again. It was a desperate attempt to try to graft something on there that doesn't get popcorn disease. And in this area, and especially in my orchard, popcorn disease is a thing that I have to worry about. So I have been spraying some mycorrhiza and other things that can help process the inoculum that's on the ground. We're resistant to burning. We have, you know, our state is susceptible to forest fires, and so burning seems to be the right thing to do, but it's not the right thing for our area. So we'll just have to, I'll keep trying until I can figure out just how to graft a mulberry. I did that, by the way, late winter, early spring. So it should, you know, it was dormant season, and I've done dormant season field grafts before with pear, and they've done fine, but these are trickier. Also, I wanted to talk a little bit about, I did persimmon grafts this year. Some took. I did some pawpaw grafts this year in the field, and some took. And I did some in pots, and they took. And I'm real proud of that, because it's not an easy tree to graft. I mean, you can get something wrong easily, and I was happy I did. Finally, I wanted to talk about the persimmon harvest this year. I actually sent a note to the persimmon interest group people, but I hadn't heard back yet as to what is going on with this harvest. There were trees that were all up on top of the hill, and they never ripened. I had a proc sitting right there with them, but the proc is a hybrid American Asian. It's called a Russian, and it has larger fruit, you know, larger round fruit, and it is astringent, but it is Asian flavored when it does ripen, and it ripened just fine. Well, the other persimmons, which are seedling trees that I got the seeds from Jerry Lehman way back, these trees have been having wonderful persimmons every year. They're just your regular American persimmons. But they're very nice. But this year they didn't ripen. I had a picture of a tree that all the fruit is on the ground, inedible. And I have another picture of a tree with all the fruit in the branches, all the leaves off. And if you look at it closely, it's not ripe. There's still dark and green marks on the fruit. So I don't know what happened, but apparently we just didn't. We had to rely on the second blossom because we got frozen out for the first blooms on just about everything. And evidently that second bloom just didn't have enough time to ripen. And I was very disappointed. I did have the Proc tree did fine, and I had a meter which was in another section that evidently got enough, didn't get frozen out as much, and I could get the fruit from that. But there's a lot more competition for that fruit, so I didn't get quite as much as I'd like, but I did get some. And that's about all I had to say, Chris. I wish I could have put some slides to it, but does anybody have any questions?
So somebody in the chat, Shane, has said he's never had much luck grafting mulberries either. They're very fussy. I can tell you what little I learned. I've not tried it yet, but or actually I did try it last year or 2 years ago. Darren from Brambleberry Farm here in Indiana, we were grafting some scion that Larry Stevenson had sent, and his tip was it was really important that if the scion leaned more towards alba, that you graft onto something closer to alba. If it had a little more of the rubra genetics in it, then grafting it onto something that had more rubra. So apparently it's a little sensitive to on the rootstock that you're grafting to, but that's what little I know. Does anybody else want to chime in on grafting mulberry?
Larry?
Yeah, I was grafting onto an Illinois everberry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I was grafting onto an Illinois everbearing.
Okay.
So if hi there, it's Chris. So in the nursery and then out in the field seem to be different because you can create more ideal conditions. But out in the field, and in the nursery, you want to wait till when the bark is slipping, juicy, and then they'll use dormant scion. They'll take right away. They'll actually, if you've got the graft right, it will just push right away. It's not one of those plants where it's just like pawpaw too. For the field, you've got to wait till it's pushing, and then you put the scion on, and it'll just go. And if it doesn't just go, it's very unlikely to go. And like Chris was saying, there's grafting compatibility with Morris rubra or Morris rubra dominant genetics. So you want to use either Tatarica, Alba Tatarica, or Alba, or a hybrid like your Illinois everbearing. So I hope that helps.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else want to have any comments on grafting mulberry?
Well, this is regarding mulberry. I'm in San Diego, 4 miles from the ocean. And ordinarily, I mean, this has been an odd year for us, but ordinarily we have spring all year long, roughly. And when I first got my first mulberry plant, I just broke some pieces off. I mean, nothing fancy. I just snapped them off and stuck them in the soil and watered them, and a bunch of them took. They didn't need rootstock or anything, and maybe it's because of our weather. Don't know. But yeah, I got a ton of babies that way, if that's what people are trying to get of the same plant.
So I'll also add that John and Christine said they successfully grafted different cultivars at the same time in the field. What worked for them was that the scions needed to be fresh and grafted preferably within 24 hours. For time of year, it's like with most fruits, when the buds start swelling in the spring, it's the most ideal time to graft for them, and they are all producing fruit now. So that's another little tip.
One more thing I wanted to add.
Sure.
You also want to watch for bleeding.
If the rootstock is large or very strong, it could bleed through the graft, and so that can slow down the healing process. But yeah, also wait till the bark is slipping, like Chris was saying. It's
And
kind of like a grape situation. If you graft it and you don't make another cut below the graft to drain the bleeding, then the graft won't heal.
Great. Thank you, Nick. Nick is one of our board members too. Let's turn to Andrew has put something in the chat. Andrew Walsh, if you'd like to take and put yourself on video real quickly, you can do a quick, I know you don't have anything to show, but you can at least tell a little bit.
I don't know if the video is going to work, unfortunately. I have a feeling it's going to boot me out of the call if I try. That's usually what happens.
Okay.
So,
all right.
is not okay?
Yeah, without the video is fine.
Perfect. Okay, well, I'll just, like I said, I was woefully unprepared because I didn't think I was going to be able to attend this particular talk. But what I can briefly talk about is an apple cataloging project I've been doing for a while now. I live in Eastern Canada. And where I live, there's not a particularly big culture of growing apples. There aren't any orchards within thousands of kilometers. And the idea of having grafted apples, like as a home grower, is a relatively new concept. My father bought a grafted Novamac, which is a Macintosh derivative out of the Nova Scotia research station. He bought that probably 20 years ago, and that was one of the first grafted apple trees I ever saw. So it's relatively new, but what has always been a culture where I live is seedling trees. So if you get an apple, you like the flavor, you just plant a seed in the ground and let it grow. And for about 150 years, people have been doing that all over the place. So in my small community of about 700 people, there's probably 200 apple trees all along the roads, and that's fairly common for my area. So as you can imagine, this provides a lot of genetic diversity. So I noticed this a couple years ago and decided nobody really picks the apples anymore. It's kind of fallen out of favor now that you can buy, the most sweet candy-like thing you can imagine in the supermarket. So I decided that I was going to take it upon myself to go around and catalog what we did have while it was still there. Because as everybody knows, apple trees don't last forever, not only from people cutting them down or fires or what have you, but also just old age. So I wanted to kind of get a good categorization of what was around while it was around. I've tried, I'm going to guess, probably 200 apples in the last couple of years from all over, just kind of seedling trees. And there's a lot of really bad ones. But there are also some very interesting apples I found, and I had really good luck this past year. One I found had some really, really nice, how do I explain this? Had some really nice, like candy-like notes, kind of like Sweet 16. I found it less sickly. I find those kinds of apples like really overly sweet, but this one had that one, had crispness, and it had a good flavor. I think that'll be a really good one. I'm definitely going to be grafting this coming spring. I found one just about a month ago that the average size of the apple in the tree was about 10 or 11 ounces. Yellow, very firm flesh, surprisingly late season because I find most of the yellow apples are soft, and they kind of tend to go off before the end of the season. What else can I say? I got another one that I'm pretty sure is a Royal Gala seedling because a friend of mine had it in his compost pile, and he mostly buys Royal Galas, but it's yellow with like a real nice pinkish top that I quite like, and that one's got some real nice firmness, real good flavor. And I found another one that greatly resembles Granny Smith that right now I'm using for apple cider. I've kind of got some apple cider going right now. I'm going to see how that turns out. But that's just this past year, and I've found a handful of good ones. The next step, I think, is going to be, grafting them onto rootstock. I'm kind of in the middle of that. But I would like to incorporate them into a breeding program because it gives me a good opportunity to work with good characteristic apples that are also adapted to my area in terms of bloom time, growing time before frost. And if they can grow really nice apples on a 100-year-old set of their own roots, they'll likely do quite well on something good. I've been using mostly G969, but I'm willing to take suggestions on rootstock. I think somebody asked where I am in Eastern Canada, Newfoundland specifically. That's about as specific as I like to get on the internet. But yeah, I'm in Newfoundland. And there's not very much of an apple growing culture here. Nova Scotia has a lot. New Brunswick has some. Not sure about PEI, but nothing in Newfoundland. And I will say, too, one thing I have going for me is that we have very little disease of apple trees. We don't have apple maggot. We don't have any kind of codling moth or anything like that. We don't have anything. I've never seen fire blight. We do have scab, but that's it.
Andrew, I just wanted to add that if you need anybody helping to taste that cider, I'm here for you.
I don't know how well it will ship, but
I have a car.
Well, it's quite the drive, but fair enough.
All right. If anyone else wants to share, go ahead and raise your hand. And I think I'm just going to take a moment. If Dan Bussey, if you would like to unmute, I'd love to hear what you're up to these days.
Oh, okay. Is that working now?
Yep.
Oh, wonderful. I finally figured this thing out. Anyways, I'm using a phone, which is a little different. Working on a lot of projects. I'm working with a historic fruit group with Cameron Peace and John Bunker and those from Washington State. I've got a community orchard going that I've been grafting trees for the last 4 years, and have got probably 1,000 trees grafted and about 600 varieties, and it's going to be a community orchard in southeast Wisconsin. And that it's going to be a mix of a lot of historic Wisconsin varieties and a lot of other ones from all over the place. And let's see, I'm working with Wisconsin Heritage Orchard, University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, where we're planting historic Wisconsin orange and apple trees around the campus areas. So students, as they're moving from building to building, can stop and pick apples in the fall when they're ripe, which is kind of fun. I'm still writing. I've got another book in the works and several more I'm hoping to get to. So never a dull moment.
Great. Thank you.
Can I ask Dan a quick question, Chris? Sorry, if I missed this, Dan, are you working to have your compendium of the apples of United States and Canada digitized?
Yeah, that's something I'm working on. I'm working on an expanded version of it that has a lot more historical information, a little more research on the people that originated the apples, because there's some interesting stories that go along with that, which I found a lot of fun. And I think the only way to actually ever get it out is to digitize it and have it available that way. So that's something I definitely need to do or keep working on. That's always my winter projects.
Great. Thank you.
Gloria has her hand up, Chris.
Gloria, if you would like to take yourself off. Yeah, there you go. Thanks.
Hi. How do I get a picture up on to share?
There's a screen share at the bottom. If you move your mouse, on my computer it shows up green. It says share screen.
Okay. So let me just pull this up. So I do a lot of forage. I do a little bit of breeding, and I do a lot of foraging. And I found a pear. It's actually a Perry pear. It's got some great astringency to it. So just a sec here. And I just want to share it with you. I'm kind of calling it the toadstool pear. Just bear with me here for a sec. It's in the wrong spot. And I just think it's a very beautiful pear. So let's pop this up here. Can you guys see that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a big pear. It's a seedling tree. And I'm not sure what its background is, but it's very fruity and astringent. It's pretty astringent. It's on the later side, which is great because it keeps. Yeah, just something to share there.
Beautiful. A lot of oohs and ahs in the chat.
Yeah, no, it's a really pretty. It's a very, very different looking pear, and I grabbed some scions late in the year, so I hope that it doesn't vanish over the winter.
Gloria, did you happen to measure the bricks on that?
Yeah,
pear?
it was like 22 or something. It was crazy high, 20 to 22.
That's great. Which
is pretty high. But it looks like the property is about to be developed, so I'm hoping that it stays.
Yeah.
Definitely try and get more scion wood if you can, and you'll have volunteers to help grow it out, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's got, so I took some in September, and then it's now cold and freezing outside, so it should probably be going into dormancy, and then as soon as it drops its leaves, I'm going to go back for more for sure.
Great, thank you. I saw another hand raised, but then it disappeared. Did somebody else have something to show and tell?
Chris, do you want me to talk about the NAFEX handbook for a second?
Go ahead and do that, and then others can raise their hand, and we'll come to them after you're done.
Oh, that sounds great. This will be very, very brief. So I was excited. One of our members posted. We have a copy of this, but I was able to get my hands on my own copy of the old NAFEX handbook, which is cool. One of our members posted about it, and I grabbed it off of eBay or somewhere. And it's really has some really good stuff. So it's got, some of it's very dated. It's got some old stuff about the history of NAFEX, the spirit of NAFEX, how the organization was structured. As someone who's relatively new to the group, I was really interested, and I'm sure a number of the people on this call will recall that we used to have fruit testing groups. So I love the idea of, Chris, when we talk about, getting folks back together either regionally or nationally to make sure that we try to bring back some of these fruit testing groups. So, and a lot of these groups have spun off into their own Facebook, creations, but anyway, I think it would be great for us to host some of those. And then there's a whole section on skills and techniques, which is really, really cool. So it's got everything from different kinds of grafting, kind of grafting knives, variety selection, exploring old orchards, different kinds of rootstocks. Anyway, it's a great treasure. So Chris can share a little bit more about our intent to bring this digitally, but I think we want to make sure that everybody else can access it too.
Yeah, so thanks to Eric Bina, who does our website as well. It's been scanned and digitized. It took us a while to make sure we had the right to do that because it was co-published. But we do have legally the right to do that. We could possibly publish it again in print. It's something we've talked about. We've just not pursued it. Probably would need some extra volunteers to maybe look into that if interested, but we'll definitely make it available on the website coming up soon. And that's just one of several bonuses that we're trying to bring to members, bringing things like that back. Eric has done some wonderful pedigree stuff on the website. So if you're brand new to NAFEX, be sure that you take some time and log in and just look at what's available. So Eric has taken a lot of the academic DNA sequencing, some of that you'll hear about on Saturday. He's taken that and he's created pedigree. So if you have a particular apple, if it's been sequenced, you can actually plug in the name and look to see who its parents are, for example. He's also been playing around a little bit with the pairs as well for that. So lots of cool stuff on the website for members. You need to log in to see that stuff. But we'll keep reminding people of those things, especially since we always have new members coming on. We'll post some of that in the Pomona and through email in the months to come. So let's move on. David, you've had your hand up for a while. David, if you would like, up to you whether you want to bring yourself on video or not, but make sure you unmute.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the handbook just a second. I was on the board when that was published, okay? And it was a problem because we wanted to publish it again, and the author did not want to do it through us again. He wanted to do it through, so it never was done.
Okay.
And are you sure we have the legal right to do that?
Yeah, we checked this and checked with the lawyer. So
the author has died, but his wife is still alive, and I just want to make sure that we're not going to get in trouble for doing it. Because we really wanted to do it again and update it, and it was at that time we didn't have a lot of money in the NAFEX coffers, so it was kind of a stress to even do it, and we sent it out to every member in NAFEX at that time.
Great.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's a wonderful.
It is a great book. I treasure my little copy. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for being a part of that. You're the first person I've heard who was involved with that. So that's just wonderful to hear. Thank you. Let's see, Eric, go ahead and unmute.
I just wanted to quickly mention another publication that NAFEX did back in 1982 called Persimmons for Everyone. Yes. And I happened to I was telling someone about it recently, and they went and looked it up, and a used copy sells for $100 on Amazon. But I was just wondering if Chuck could do it, or whoever looked into it last time, if we can find out if we can republish that one as well or not. It seemed to have a couple whose last name is Griffith who were published on it, as well as Jason McDaniel, who of course has passed away. So I don't know what the situation would be there, but it would be real nice to find out.
Great. Yeah, we'll look into that. I think the part of the copyright thing is if it was jointly published, if both entities held the copyright, then the ability to reprint was there, but we'll double check that. If anybody here happens to have a copy of it that they are willing to let us borrow so that we could scan it, at least, that would be fabulous. Because so far the only copies we've been able to find have been the ones on eBay, which are.
I think I'll have to look through it again. I think the data we got from Jerry Lehman's computer has a scanned copy on there.
That would be fabulous.
I'll go back and look into that.
Great. Thank you. Chris Homanics, you got your hand up.
Hey, everybody. I'll turn my camera on. I just want to share a few apples. You were speaking about, some people are speaking about wanting to preserve Scion. And I recently, I still go to Nick Botner's orchard every year. It's kind of a quieter place now that Nick has passed away, and his wife and family are sort of taking care of it. I want to get back in there this winter with some friends to clean the blackberries up. But I wanted to share some apples with you all. It's been a really crappy year. Like a lot of people are mentioning about persimmons and, having blind fruit trees. So a lot of what should have produced didn't produce in his orchard. But there's some interesting apples nonetheless. I did want to show you some interesting red flesh apples that I've looked at for several years. I'm gonna I don't know how to turn the camera around. Oh, yes, I do. Okay, here we go. That's a lot better. Okay, so this is winter red flesh. Some people probably know about this Dr. Hansen one. It's still good, unlike most red flesh apples, but this one's definitely worth growing. If you don't have it, you should get it. This is a less common one called red vein crab. It's similar to winter red flesh, and I think it's also a Dr. Hansen. And obviously, like, this orchard hasn't seen any care, so like these apples are in kind of crappy shape. It's soft now, but it has a really nice berry flavor. And then the third is another Dr. Hansen one called Skugog. And she's like a little bad, but the berry flavor on this is great. If somebody wanted a little red flesh crab, I recommend Skugog. It's Stugog. And there's some other red flesh ones in here, but I did want to show you this apple. This apple's dwarfed. It's usually bigger than this, but it's called House. And I think it's a Macintosh descendant. It is an excellent apple, and you don't get too many white apples, but it's pretty great. And then Pitmassen Permain. This is the russetative form. Pitmassen I'm going to butcher it. My girlfriend knows French. I don't. It's like non-Perrier. This apple is excellent. And then I've always been interested in crabs. So we're going to be talking with Stephen Edholm later in the week about hybridization. And one of the things that I find really interesting are crabs that I think have value to further hybridize. This is most years this is an orange fleshed crab. Right now it's still panic, but it holds on the tree forever. It hasn't really developed its orange flesh yet, but it's milding up, and it would be really great for cider. And most apples only produced a few apples, but there were a few that really stood out. This is Marichal. Marichal is a French bittersweet apple, and definitely extremely bitter. The flavor is like just these rich, kind of indescribable notes. Not really fruity, but it's really floral and wonderful. But man, it's just choking up my mouth right now. It's so bitter. But this apple is a really great high producing bittersweet. And like I said, most apples dwarfed this year, but this was one that didn't. This apple tends to produce pretty well every year there that I've seen it. These are all the late ripening window apples too. So we're about like 2 to 3 weeks behind in our season. So these are apples that are long hanging and later storing apples, later season apples. It's called Peck's Pleasant. This apple is really great. It's got a really nice crunch. It's like, I don't know, it's excellent. It's starting to go, but it's a really wonderful apple. There was so Nick has a lot of apples which are obscure or kind of unknown, like that house apple I showed you that was white. This is one that was a commercial apple that was never released, and I think it was out of Canada. Speaking of Canada, it's HER 3T1166. It is a very disease-resistant apple. In 2018, we did organized a collective anthracnose study where we went through the orchard looking at all the trees, and we took note of which apples were the most anthracnose resistant and otherwise disease resistant. And this was like a top 5 apple. It's still real hard right now. Real nice, bright, juicy flavor. Kind of some banana notes, but some people don't like that. Maybe a strawberry note. Just a couple more here. Sorry. This is Joy's Delight, and this was found by a guy named Ken Priddy, Pridy, and despite having been in a wheelchair, he actually discovered a lot of interesting apples in Oregon. He's older now, and so I try to propagate his varieties to preserve them. And anyway, this is called Joy's Delight. I think that was after his mother. I think his mother's name's Joy. But anyway, this is an excellent apple. This is one of my favorite apples. And then one last one. This is for you, Gloria. If you don't have this apple in Canada or the U.S., you guys should get it. It goes by a couple of different names. We call this Reinette Gris du Canada because that's what it's called, Nick's Orchard, but it's also called Canadian Gris. But this is like one of my favorite all-time russeted apples. It stores a long time. It's triploid. It's extremely productive. It hangs on the tree a while. Probably not blight resistant, but just an excellent apple. But anyway, I could go on, but there's last one. Sorry, but this one's really great. It dwarfs out a lot because it produces so heavy. I believe it's in the USDA collection. It's called Sumatuka, Sumatooka, and this thing is bulletproof. Never gets scab. Very codling resistant, fire blight resistant, incredibly precocious every year. Yeah, it's just a really great apple. And to answer what Andrew said, I actually try to just spread around Scion, and we do that a lot through the Agrarian Sharing Network events. So I don't want to just like keep these apples and just brag about them, but I want to get them out to the world and kind of to continue Nick's mission of seeing more people grow more apples, and our mission too, so really promote backyard fruit. So anyway, thanks.
All right, I think now we're all jealous of all the apples you just got to taste. That's fabulous. Thank you. let's, Ruth Ann. Ruth Ann has her hand up. If you would like to take your, unmute yourself, and up to you if you want to come on to screen.
I'm trying with the video. My desk, there we go. I logged in on my desktop and got booted out. So now I'm on my crappy old laptop, which is why this camera is so very bad. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'm like brand new, literally joined yesterday. So for whoever keeps track of this, the ad on Facebook worked because that's how I found out about it. I'm in Eastern Ontario, so yay, go more Canadians. And I'm going to be breaking ground on my orchard in the spring. I live in driving distance of Stéphane Sokobiak's place in southern Quebec, so I've been up to visit his orchard a couple times. We're in the same zone, we have the same soil. So I've got this fantastic model that I can access because what works on his place will work on my place because the conditions are exactly the same. So I'm planning a permaculture style orchard, so I'm really interested in that presentation coming up. So like you, Chris, later in life, middle age, moved to the country. I've always wanted to farm, but because of the pandemic, we could actually relocate. So yeah, so I'm brand new and keen and learning lots of stuff. And yeah, just thought I'd say hi.
Welcome, thank you. All right, let's see. Do we have anybody else who would like to share? Looking through the screen here. Caitlin. You can unmute your studio.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Caitlin. I'm currently located in Maryland, but will be moving to Tennessee next year and helping to establish a community orchard. And with that, I'm very, very glad. I just got my Pomona in the mail like 2 days ago from you, Chris. So thank you for that. Really appreciate that. I'm very much interested in growing perennial fruits and vegetables, specifically different types of palm fruits like apples, pears, as well as eventually going into persimmons, mulberries, and others. But very excited, really hoping to see a digital copy of the handbook because those techniques sounds very, very useful. And I also just last week got a set of Dan Bussey's encyclopedia set. So thank you for that, Dan. And I would love to connect with you at some point. I'm very excited to be meeting with all of you, and thank you all for the tips in the chat and where else to find people for Southeastern fruits.
Great, thank you. So just a quick plug, she mentioned permaculture. So we will be talking with Juan Carlos and Robert Frew tomorrow on the permaculture orchard. They're here in Indiana, and you'll get to see their layout, their design that was done by some permaculture design folks. And I won't give it all away, but they've had some hurdles and some things along the way. So you get to learn. It's great because we can learn from each other's mistakes, right? Or the things that, not necessarily mistakes, but things that we've encountered. So their talk is going to be great. So check in tomorrow if you can. If not, it's going to be recorded. And let's see, John Leonard, if you would like to unmute. John, you're still muted. Let's see. All right. For some reason, John can't unmute.
Oh, yes, I can.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
I've just got shaky hands, so that light isn't going to work, is it there? Let's see here. Hi, everybody. John Leonard here, coming to you from the Klondike in the Yukon. We're at 64 degrees north latitude, same latitude as about Fairbanks, Alaska. I've been a member for I'll guess 6 years, maybe longer. I've been growing fruit up here, and this. So we're if people aren't familiar, we're east of the Alaska border, about 100 miles up in very northwestern Canada. We grow, presently we're probably down to about 75 varieties of apples out of 500 initial starts. We grow a certain amount of about a dozen pears, some sour cherries, grapes. Most of this, by the way, is being done in kind of 3-season shelters, kind of like a hoop house. They're designed to catch snow because we have winter temperatures that get down to 50 below Celsius fairly regularly. So we have to start and grow, excuse me, a lot of new trees for replacements because we do regularly lose trees to cold, although some of our oldest go back 30 years.
Wow.
And I just wanted to, share and let you know that your network has such breadth to it that it's reaching far-flung people. And here's one.
So just for you, John, Andrew says a couple things. He said, first, it sounds like you're really pushing the boundaries for fruit growers, which is amazing. And he wants to know what your favorite apple is that you've grown up there, and the best performing one.
It's very late for us to have nice looking fruit. We had a very wet season. If people along the West Coast were complaining about the drought, your rain just moved 2,000 miles north. We had a dreadfully wet summer, so nothing colored up. This is one of our favorites. It was bred at the University of Saskatchewan, festive treat. It typically would have a nice pink blush to it. Kind of Mac-like, just to give a general overview of it. That's a very late apple for us. One of our largest, and we pretty much sell locally all of our fruit, and that's the real favorite. Another development from the University of Saskatchewan is this beauty. This is Autumn Delight. And again, it's very poorly colored. They'll often go strawberry red in a good year. And then one other one, this is an unreleased apple that sizes up quite well for us, 41036. And as far as favorites goes, you've got your favorite, and our ripening season starts about the 20th of August. From May, end of May bloom. And, so there's the early apples that we really love, and you wait for your mid-season apples. And then, you hope that the fall is long enough to be able to squeak out your latest apples. I've got a lot of our trees, or a lot of our varieties, are multi heads on trees in order to trial a lot of varieties in a small space, since we're growing most things under plastic. And one of the selections that that I've been patiently waiting for, I think about 20 years, I've been waiting for first bloom on the Honeycrisp. And I think I've got flower buds next year. It's a branch. I originally had a tree on its own roots, but after it didn't bloom for the first 12 years, I just cut it down because I don't really expect it to ripen. But, we've got to have our little pet projects out there. So, yeah, that's
Thank you.
no
Thank you for
particular favorites.
So the one other thing I would like to mention, for anyone who's especially very north, Jeff Lowenfeld, who lives in Alaska, he's going to be one of our speakers tomorrow. So definitely, he's the author of several books, one of which is called Teaming with Microbes. So he'll be talking about soil and soil health and how that relates to our orchards. So definitely check in with him on that. There's a couple of other questions in the chat, which I'm not going to open it up for answers because we're reaching that point where we need to end this, unfortunately. But if anyone has the ability to answer these, Jeannie asks, I think she might be asking John, but I'm not for sure. If you're growing any cherries from the romance series. And Andrew wants to know what rootstock do you use? Let's see, B118 or I don't have my glasses on. Anyway, he's interested in what rootstocks you're growing. So, and that's directed to John. Okay, so with that, I want to kind of wrap up this first session. If you came on late, you can always see the recording for this next week. We went through our annual meeting, which was about a half hour, and then we got into the show and tell. I do again want to thank our sponsors. We had a couple different levels of sponsorship. One Green World has been our big sponsor for this entire conference. We've also had Copenhagen Nursery and Farms and Nursery, Edible Landscaping, Orchard People, and Southern Cultured Nursery, who sponsored this this entire conference. So we'll be talking more about them and giving them thanks in the sessions to come. Again, each day we'll be sending out an email, so be sure to check your email in the morning. It will have the links for each session. If you don't get the email for some reason, you can log into the website using your email address, and we will have the links there that you can use to link into each session. The coming up sessions are going to be a little bit different format. It's going to be a webinar format, so you will not be able to unmute or bring yourself onto video. That is because we want to be able to make sure that we have really good connections for our speakers, because we've got some phenomenal speakers that we've brought in. So, but you will be able to ask questions in the chat. So the way that the sessions will work is the speaker will present. We'll have breaks and times when we'll take the questions from the chat and pitch them back to the speaker, and then hopefully the speakers can answer all of the questions that you guys will have. So a great way to still interact with these speakers. You just won't be able to verbally come off of mute to do that. So with that,
Chris, can we, just for fun, can we close this meeting out by having everybody come and turn on their video? Yes. And I'll switch it to gallery view so we can see everybody and we can wave good night to one another.
And there's actually 3 pages of gallery, so we had great attendance tonight. So I hope that this has been fun for you guys. If you like the show and tell and you want to see this again next year, either at the conference or maybe we do it a couple times throughout the year for fun, show and tell and drinks or whatever, we would love to maybe do this again. So thank you guys for coming tonight. Don't forget, tonight, our next conference coming up in a half hour is Lee Reich, who will be talking about espalier trees. So at 7 o'clock, so 30 minutes from now, you can jump back on with the link that we sent and join in for that session as well. And then we've got 4 sessions tomorrow and 2 on Saturday. So lots of good information coming to you guys. Thank you all for joining us. It was wonderful to see you all. Have a great evening, and hopefully we'll see many of you in 30 minutes. Bye.